Okay, welcome back. In this video, what I'd like to do is look at this second problem, the one with the enrollment in U.S. degree granting institutions for undergraduate students in millions, where I had the year and the undergraduates, and I'd like to go over some of these questions. Specifically, I like to use Excel to be able to compute and maybe find some of these, especially letter B, graph the linear model, but also to determine what the model is, and then use the model to predict. And then the interpret the slope, I think we talked about that, so I'll let you guys do that on your own. And then if you can do this one, you should be able to do this one. Now, on the test, since most of you chose this one, I think you'll get something closer to this, but you should know how to do the second one. You never know what I might come up with. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. So here is Excel. I've already typed up all the numbers exactly the way they are, so you do have to type them up a little bit. There are some shortcuts, and I'll show you maybe in a different video some shortcuts, but right now, let's pretend I just typed them up. And so what I'm going to do to get this model is what I like to do is highlight all of it. So some people like to drag like this with the mouse. I usually hit the 1980, press the shift button, and then go to this corner and click again, and it highlights everything for me. You'll find what you need under charts. So you click on charts, and even if you have a PC, there still is a chart button, and then look for scatter plot, and then look for marked scatter. That looks like this. Okay, here is our plot, and what I look at now is format. I want to change the way this looks a little bit. Sorry, not format, chart layout. And first of all, I don't like this legend. It doesn't really help me very much. So I'm going to go ahead and say no legend. Now, what you could do is add axes. So, for example, if you want a title below, the years, you can type it in. And notice that I used the 1975, 1980. I actually didn't use anything else. Remember, we can subtract because I like having the years at the bottom. But again, it's up to you. And then here, I could say, okay, let's do a vertical axis. And let's write undergraduates. And if you don't like the way that looks, I think you can change it so that it's rotated instead. Undergraduates. Then maybe enter in millions. Okay, so there are our axes nice and labeled, but what I'm really interested in this, I want to find the model. And so what's really nice about Excel, not only does it find the model for you, but it draws the line. And so what I go is here on the trend line, and a linear trend line is fine, but I like the options because there's some options you can choose. And so for example, the first thing I would do is the type. There's all these types, but I want linear. Today we're learning about linear models, and most of this class is about linear models. And so I drew the line. Notice now the line is drawn. But one of the options that I prefer is I like to know what the equation is. And there it is. Notice that it placed it right here. This is our model. And then something that we'll talk about eventually is this r squared value that you can say. And what it says is how close is this to linear, but we won't need it today. What we need is this guy. This is the model that I like to be able to highlight. And so this is what allows us to make predictions, and this is the one we came up with in class. And so now I'd like to show you how Excel can help you make predictions, and this is where the jobs can happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this the input, and it's going to be years. That's why I put it under there. And then this will be the output. And then here's where I'm going to place whatever year I want. So for example, 1980 if you want. And then here, I'm going to actually place the equation. But the way I'm going to type this, I'm going to say equals 0.254 times. But I'm not going to use x. X stands for the input. And the input is this number over here. So I click on the 1980. And notice it says A10. The reason it says A10 is because that's the name of this cell, of this box, of this area. It's on the A column. 10th row. So that's why it's called A10. And then I'm going to subtract 492.44. And sure enough, notice that it matches the 10.48 that we have up here. And in fact, if I go through all the numbers, 1985 matches 11.75. 1990 does just as fine. 1995, it's also fine. So it definitely allows us to see it actually predicts the model very nicely. Not every model works this way, but this model really does. Now, the other thing is that notice that on our graph here, it actually has dates before 1980 and 2010. This is one of the reasons why I like using Excel. It kind of produces a really nice graph for you anyway. Now, going back to the questions. One of your first questions was, so we graphed it. we determined the model. Use the model to predict the undergraduate student enrollment in 2025. Well, what's nice about Excel is now I just go here and say 2025, and there you go. In 2025, according to this model, we'll have 21.91 million undergraduates. And then if I do this again, when will the student population reach 30 million? Now here, the model doesn't work backwards. You would have to program the model to work backwards, but you can take guesses, guess and check. This is nice to do guess and check without having to actually write it down, because you see, I can guess, well, maybe it happens in 2040. Nope, only 25 million. What about 2050? Oh, 28 million, I'm getting closer. What about 2055? Oh, I'm really close, 2953. And so then when I do 2056, oh, I almost had it, 2057. And so now we're over 30 million. So somehow, sometime in 2056, probably in November or December, the model, we must have gotten undergraduate enrollment over 30 million. Or maybe it happened in 2057 at the beginning of the spring semester. I'm not really sure. But anyways, the model is not perfect, but it does kind of help us predict the numbers that we're going to get. And finally, the last one, interpret the slope of the model. This basically tells us how many students are enrolling per year. The increase in enrollment per year is what I would say. But again, you think of the words that make more sense to you and use those words. I hope this helps and hopefully makes you a little comfortable with Excel. I would play with this. Maybe play with the second problem. And one of the problems I didn't give you was actually this one. This is one that maybe we'll do on Tuesday, where you can either use a calculator or an Excel. But you can probably pause this right now, and if you want to copy this down, but it's the same thing. I would like you to use Excel or the calculator to find out the models for these two. This is enrollment by gender, and then maybe do some predictions here. Okay? Well, I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Have a good weekend.